Human who questions, human who does not lose hope. Preface. Questions about existence and reasons for hope. Humans are beings who question, and at the same time, beings who do not abandon hope even in the face of failure. These two aspects may seem different, but they actually come from the same root. Questions like, why must we live? And why must we keep trying? Ask about the purpose and value of our existence while also becoming the source of hope that prevents us from giving up in any situation. Human history has unfolded around these two axes, questioning and hope. From ancient Greek philosophers to modern scientists, humans have continuously questioned themselves and the world. At the same time, they have not abandoned hope for the future, even in terrible situations like famine, war, disease, and disaster. These two abilities might be the most important characteristics that distinguish humans from other living beings. The topic we will explore today concerns how these two aspects, human who questions and human who does not lose hope, are connected to each other and how they influence our lives and society. This exploration of fundamental human nature goes beyond mere academic curiosity. It will be a journey to understand ourselves more deeply and live more meaningful lives. Chapter 1. The ability to question, a unique human characteristic. One of the most important characteristics that distinguishes humans from other living beings is the ability to question. Of course, some higher primates and other animals show basic curiosity, but only humans can ask profound questions like, who am I? Zrenia, where did we come from and where are we going? Logically, and what is the meaning of all this? Interestingly, young children continuously ask why questions out of pure curiosity about the world. The endless why questions that a 3-year-old asks their parents are actually moments when an essential human characteristic manifests. These questions gradually become more complex and deeper as we grow, establishing the pillars of human civilization: philosophy, science, art, and religion. Socrates said, "The only thing I know is that I know nothing." This famous saying perfectly demonstrates the essence of questioning. Questioning begins with acknowledging ignorance. Only when we acknowledge that we don't know something does the journey toward true knowledge begin. This academic humility has been the starting point for all great discoveries and inventions. Looking at great discoveries that changed the world, there was always someone's simple yet revolutionary question at the beginning. Isaac Newton asked, "Why does an apple always fall downward?" Which eventually led to the discovery of the law of gravity. Albert Einstein prepared the groundwork for the theory of relativity through the thought experiment. What would it look like if I ran alongside a beam of light at the speed of light? Thus, questioning is a powerful tool that goes beyond mere curiosity to understand and change the world. Of course, from a cynical perspective, one could point out that this endless human questioning sometimes leads to unnecessary worry. Other animals are faithful to basic goals, like survival and reproduction, and don't trouble themselves with complex philosophical questions. Perhaps their lives are simpler and happier. As the saying goes, ignorance is bliss. Sometimes knowing too much, questioning too much, can bring pain. But despite this, humans continue to question without stopping. This is our nature. The ability to question also provides humans with opportunities for self-reflection. Questions like, what kind of person am I? What is the purpose of my life? And what values do I pursue? Help us understand ourselves more deeply and live more consciously. Socrates' famous saying, "The unexamined life is not worth living," emphasizes the importance of such self-questioning. Furthermore, questioning becomes the driving force for social change. Questions like, why is the world so unequal? And how can we create a better society? become seeds of social movements and reforms. Values like democracy, human rights, and equality all began with fundamental questions about the existing order. Ultimately, the ability to question is a powerful tool that allows humans to not just adapt to their given environment, but to understand and change it. This is one of the key reasons why humans have become the most successful species on Earth. Chapter 2: Awareness of Ignorance and the Pursuit of Knowledge. The starting point of questioning lies in the awareness of ignorance. When we acknowledge that we don't know something, the process of learning begins. This is true not only at the individual level, but also for human civilization as a whole. Historically, human knowledge has expanded through continuous questioning. Ancient Greek philosophers began to seek rational principles rather than mythical explanations for natural phenomena. Philosophers like Thales, Anaximander, and Pythagoras laid the foundations of Western philosophy and science by asking, what is the fundamental principle of the world? During the medieval period, religious doctrines were dominant, but during the Renaissance and Enlightenment, humans began to question again. Questions like, why should we believe that? And how can we be certain of that? Became the foundation of modern philosophy through philosophers like Descartes, Spinoza, Locke, and Hume. The scientific revolution also began with questioning. Copernicus asked, what if the Earth is not the center of the universe? Which led to a revolution in astronomy. Galileo asked, what laws govern the movement of freely falling objects? And through this, laid the foundation for modern physics. Here we discover an ironic aspect of human knowledge pursuit. The more we know, we actually realize that we don't know more. Einstein said, as our circle of knowledge expands, so does the circumference of darkness surrounding it. For example, the development of modern physics like quantum mechanics and cosmology provides us with more answers, while simultaneously giving us many new questions. From this perspective, the pursuit of knowledge is like Sisyphus rolling his boulder. No matter how hard we try, we may never reach complete knowledge. Paradoxically, however, it is precisely this endless journey that creates the beauty and meaning of human existence. In the journey toward knowledge, we continuously grow and develop. Awareness of ignorance also teaches intellectual humility. The reason Socrates was wiser than the citizens of Athens was not because he knew more, but because he acknowledged his ignorance. True wisdom begins with knowing how much you don't know. In modern society, this intellectual humility is very important. Too many people offer confident opinions on complex problems with their limited knowledge. The Dunning-Kruger effect, as this phenomenon is called, shows a cognitive bias where the less knowledge one has, the more they tend to overestimate their abilities. Awareness of ignorance also leads to an attitude of respecting diverse perspectives. When I acknowledge that I cannot know everything, I begin to listen to others' experiences and knowledge. This becomes the foundation for creating a more inclusive and harmonious society. The pursuit of knowledge is not simply accumulating information. It is the process of understanding the world, finding one's place in it, and ultimately discovering the meaning of life. Through questioning, we form relationships with the world, and within those relationships, we discover ourselves. Chapter 3: Hope, Beyond Simple Optimism. Hope is another core aspect of human existence. However, the hope we speak of here is different from simple optimism or positive thinking. True hope is the ability to find meaning and possibility even while facing the difficulties and pain of reality. Václav Havel, a Czech writer and politician, defined hope as not the conviction that something will turn out well, but the certainty that something makes sense, regardless of how it turns out. This definition precisely captures the essence of hope. Hope is not optimism about the outcome, but trust in the process. Even in the darkest times of human history, hope has always existed. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist who survived Nazi concentration camps, recorded in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, the human ability to find meaning even in extreme suffering. He said, "Those who have a why to live can bear almost any how. This is the power of true hope. In modern society, we sometimes fall into the trap of what is called toxic positivity. Blind belief that everything will be fine, pressure to suppress negative emotions and think only positively, can actually lead to greater frustration and disappointment. True hope is different. It is the ability to find meaning and value, even while acknowledging pain, failure, and uncertainty." From a cynical perspective, hope might be merely a psychological defense mechanism for humans to endure an unbearable reality. Nietzsche said, "Hope is the worst of all evils because it prolongs the torments of man." Indeed, sometimes hope can prevent us from facing reality and delay necessary changes. However, despite such criticism, hope is an essential element for humans to overcome adversity and grow. Hope is particularly important in times of personal crisis or social turmoil. Psychologists explain through the concept of resilience the human ability to recover quickly from adversity and even grow from it. Hope always lies at the heart of this resilience. When there is hope for the future, belief in the possibility of change, people can better endure current difficulties. At the social level, hope becomes the driving force for change. Martin Luther King Jr. "Yes, I Have a Dream" speech is a prime example of moving people's hearts and bringing about social change through the language of hope. The world he dreamed of was far from the reality of his time, but that hopeful vision made many people act, eventually bringing change. Hope is also the driving force for scientific discovery and technological innovation. Medical researchers developing new treatments, scientists researching clean energy solutions, engineers exploring the possibilities of artificial intelligence, all work based on hope for a better future. Their work acknowledges current limitations and problems, but is based on the belief that they can be overcome. In conclusion, true hope is not an escape from reality, but an engagement with it. It is the ability to acknowledge the darkness of the world while finding and creating light within it. In this sense, hope is not a simple emotion, but a core aspect of human existence and the fundamental force that allows us to live meaningful lives. Chapter 4: Self-Discovery Through Questioning. Who am I? Is one of the oldest and most universal questions in human history. This question is not simply about one's name, occupation, or social role. It is about the essence of our existence, our unique place and meaning in this world. The entrance to the ancient Greek temple of Delphi was inscribed with the phrase, "Know thyself." This simple command emphasizes the importance of self-understanding. Knowing oneself is the starting point of all wisdom. However, this is never an easy task. The exploration of the self is a lifelong journey that requires constant questioning and reflection. Our self is not a single, fixed entity. It is a complex construct with various aspects and layers. Psychologist Carl Jung explained the human mind in 3 levels: consciousness, personal unconscious, and collective unconscious. The conscious self is the self we routinely recognize, but beneath it lies a much deeper and broader realm of the unconscious. Questions about the self are often triggered by identity crises. At transitional points in life, such as adolescence, middle age, or old age, or in crisis situations like separation, loss, or failure, we come to have fundamental doubts about who we are. These questions can be painful, but also provide opportunities for growth and change. From a cynical perspective, Such self-exploration might seem like a luxury. According to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, self-actualization is a higher need that can only be pursued after the most basic survival needs are met. In a reality where many people around the world are still struggling for basic survival, concerns about the self might be seen as a luxury of the privileged. But paradoxically, even in the most extreme situations, humans often question the meaning of existence. As Viktor Frankl witnessed in Nazi concentration camps, the effort to find meaning is sometimes as important as survival itself. In the process of self-discovery, we often find ourselves different from what we thought. Beneath the image we have created of ourselves, the roles society has given us, the persona we have acted out to meet others' expectations, there exists a self of more complex, contradictory, and sometimes uncomfortable truths. Facing and accepting this shadow is an important part of true self-understanding. Questions about the self also lead to questions about the relationship between ourselves and others, ourselves and the world. In his book I and Thou, Martin Buber argued that human existence is essentially relational. We discover ourselves not as isolated individuals, but in relationships with others, connections with community, and communion with nature. In modern society, self-discovery has become an even more complex task. With the development of social media and digital technology, we have to create and manage various online personas. The boundary between the true self and the digital self is becoming increasingly blurred. Also, with the spread of globalization and multiculturalism, we are exposed to more identity options and role models. This provides greater freedom and possibilities, but also brings greater confusion and uncertainty. In the journey of self-discovery, we often face our own limitations. We are not perfect, and we may never completely know ourselves. However, acknowledging these limitations itself is an important part of self-understanding. As Socrates said, true wisdom begins with knowing one's ignorance. Ultimately, questions about the self connect to larger questions about the meaning of life. We explore ourselves not just to know who we are, but to know how we should live, what we should live for. In this sense, self-discovery is a holistic journey that includes ethical and spiritual dimensions. Chapter 5. Failure and the depth of questioning. Failure is a universal part of human experience. No matter how talented, well-prepared, or hard-working we are, we all experience failure at some point in life. However, failure is not simply a cause of frustration. Failure also provides opportunities for deeper questions and reflection. The story of Thomas Edison experiencing thousands of failures in the process of inventing the light bulb is famous. When someone asked him how he could endure so many failures, Edison replied, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." This shows a revolutionary perspective on failure. Failure is not the end, but part of the learning process. When experiencing failure, we often face the most fundamental questions. Why am I doing this? Is this really what I want? What is the purpose of my life? These questions are easily buried in everyday success, but emerge intensely in moments of failure. After the first draft of the Harry Potter series was rejected by 12 publishers, J.K. Rowling deeply reflected on her life and dream as a writer. She later said in a Harvard University commencement speech, "Failure stripped away the inessential. I stopped pretending to myself that I was anything other than what I was, and began to direct all my energy into finishing the only work that mattered to me." Thus, failure provides an opportunity to re-establish our values and priorities. Of course, not all failures immediately lead to deep insights. Moments of failure are usually accompanied by strong negative emotions like frustration, anger, and shame. It is important to acknowledge and experience these emotions. However, at the same time, we need the ability to not be overwhelmed by these emotions and to see beyond them. Here, to present a somewhat cynical perspective, our society often tends to hide true fear and aversion to failure behind the rhetoric of learning from failure. While a field of failure studies emerges and TED speakers advise to embrace failure, in reality, failure still often leads to stigma and disadvantage. The experience of receiving an F in school, ruining an important project at work, or having a business go bankrupt is still painful and sometimes destructive. The saying, failure is the mother of success, might be easy to say only for those who have already succeeded. Nevertheless, the educational and existential value of failure cannot be denied. Failure tests our assumptions and beliefs, reveals our blind spots and weaknesses, and provides opportunities for growth. Without failure, there is no true innovation and development. Behind every great invention, discovery, and work of art, there is a history of numerous failures. Failure also teaches us humility. Success often leads to arrogance and overconfidence, but failure reminds us of our limitations and vulnerabilities. This humility becomes the foundation for empathy and solidarity with others. When we acknowledge that we all experience failure, we can send more understanding and support to each other. Furthermore, our attitude toward failure varies by culture and era. In some cultures, failure is seen as a shame, while in others, it is accepted as part of the learning process. The Silicon Valley motto, "Fail fast, fail often," reflects a view of failure as an essential part of innovation. In contrast, in many East Asian cultures, failure tends to be seen as a dishonor, not only to oneself, but also to family and community. Ultimately, a healthy approach to failure is not about completely denying it or excessively glorifying it, but about acknowledging its complexity and multifacetedness. Failure is a painful and difficult experience, but at the same time, it provides opportunities for deep questioning, reflection, and growth. How we interpret and respond to failure determines its ultimate meaning. Chapter 6. Hope as an anchor of the soul. Even in the darkest night of the human soul, hope always exists. Hope is not a simple emotion or temporary state. It is like an anchor of the soul, a fundamental force that allows us to take root even in storms. Hebrews 6:19 records, "We have this hope as an anchor for the soul, firm and secure." This Bible verse perfectly captures the essence of hope. Just as an anchor allows a ship to maintain stability even in a storm, hope allows us to maintain firmness in the hardships and uncertainties of life. Historically, the most powerful forms of hope have blossomed in the most difficult times. Under slavery, Negro spirituals sang of hope for freedom and salvation. Holocaust survivors kept hope for the future, even in extreme despair. Even under political oppression and dictatorship, hope for democracy and freedom continued to live in people's hearts. Hope is also a shield that protects us psychologically. Psychologist C.R. Snyder defined hope as the perceived capability to derive pathways to desired goals and motivate oneself via agency thinking to use those pathways. According to his research, people with high hope are less vulnerable to stress and depression, recover more quickly from difficulties, and show better academic and professional outcomes. However, here we can ask a somewhat cynical question. Isn't hope just a form of escapism? Indeed, hope can sometimes prevent us from facing the pain and difficulties of reality. Nietzsche called hope the most evil of evils because he saw it as making people endure present suffering, thereby delaying necessary change. When Marx criticized religion as the opium of the people, it was in a similar context, seeing hope for the afterlife as weakening resistance to injustice in reality. There is some validity to these criticisms, Blind and passive hope, hope that does not face reality, can actually be harmful. However, true hope is different. True hope is seeing the possibility of change while acknowledging and facing reality. Desmond Tutu, an anti-apartheid activist and Anglican Archbishop of South Africa, defined hope as being able to see that there is light despite all of the darkness. He saw hope not as an escape from reality, but as the driving force for engagement with reality. For him, hope was the energy for the struggle for change. Hope also becomes a thread, connecting individuals beyond community and generations. We hope not just for our own future, but for a better world for our children and future generations. In this sense, hope has deep ethical and spiritual dimensions. It allows us to connect with a greater good beyond ourselves. Scientific studies show that hope has a positive impact on physical health as well. Patients with hopeful attitudes tend to recover faster, manage pain better, and have enhanced immune function. This is a good example of the mind-body connection, or psychosomatic relationship. In religious traditions, hope is considered a core virtue. In Christianity, faith, hope, and love are considered the three main virtues. In Islam, Raja, or hope in Allah's mercy, is an important spiritual attitude. In Buddhism, hope for liberation from suffering and enlightenment becomes the motivation for practice. Hope is also a central theme in art and literature. Emily Dickinson sang, "Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul." From Victor Hugo's Les Miserables to J.R.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings, many literary works tell stories of hope that discover light, even in darkness. In conclusion, hope is not simple optimism. It is a profound trust that believes in the possibility of a better future while acknowledging the difficulties of reality. As an anchor of the soul, hope allows us to take root, find meaning, and move forward even in the storms of life. Chapter 7. Questions and Hope in Community. Questions and hope do not remain only at the personal level. They are also key elements in community formation and change. In community, we question together and hope together. Historically, all great social movements began with fundamental questions. Are all humans truly equal? How can economic justice be realized? Are environmental conservation and economic development compatible? These questions have led beyond individual reflection to changes in collective consciousness and social action. Martin Luther King Jr. "As I Have a Dream" speech is a powerful expression of communal hope. His dream was not just a personal aspiration but a vision for American society as a whole. He did not lose hope for a better future while facing the reality of racial discrimination and injustice. This communal hope inspired countless people and became the driving force for social change. Questions in community create a space for dialogue that includes diverse perspectives and experiences. German philosopher Jürgen Habermas emphasized the importance of the public sphere, where all participants can freely and equally share opinions, through his concept of the ideal speech situation. Through this open process of dialogue and questioning, communities can reach more inclusive and just social consensus. However, from a cynical perspective, questions and hope in community are often distorted and limited by power and interests. French philosopher Michel Foucault argued that knowledge and discourse are always connected to power relations. Which questions are considered important and which hopes are accepted as realistic are often determined by social power structures. For example, within the dominant narrative of economic growth, questions about environmental protection or social equality are often dismissed as unrealistic or hindering economic development. Similarly, the hopes and aspirations of certain groups are often not recognized or ignored in mainstream society. This shows how important it is to ensure diversity and inclusivity of questions and hope within the community. Communal hope also takes on the character of an intergenerational contract. German philosopher Hans Jonas emphasized the ethical responsibility that the current generation has toward future generations through his principle of responsibility. Faced with global crises like climate change, resource depletion, and biodiversity loss, we have a responsibility to hope together for a better future and take collective action to make it a reality. The advent of the digital age has brought new possibilities and challenges for communal questioning and hope. Social media and online platforms provide opportunities for more people to participate in public dialogue, while also causing new problems like echo chambers, fake news, and extremism. Promoting genuine dialogue and mutual understanding in the digital public sphere is one of the important challenges of modern democracy. Communal hope sometimes exists in a tension with reality. Overly optimistic or idealistic visions can ignore practical constraints and lead to disappointment and disillusionment. On the other hand, overly realistic or conservative attitudes can limit creative possibilities and opportunities for fundamental change. Healthy communal hope finds a balance between these two extremes, believing in the possibility of change while facing reality. In conclusion, questions and hope in community are the core drivers of social development and change. They allow us to imagine a better future together, cooperate for it, and respond to common challenges. True community thrives where diverse questions and hopes can be freely expressed and respected, and where they can lead to collective action and change. Chapter 8. Tools for interpreting and changing reality. Questions and hope go beyond mere states of thinking and feeling to become powerful tools for interpreting and changing reality. How we question and what we hope for determine how we see the world and how we act within it. In terms of reality interpretation, the questions we ask are like lenses. The question, "How does this work?" seeks mechanical, causal understanding. The question, "What does this mean?" requires a hermeneutic, phenomenological approach. The question, "How useful is this?" reflects a pragmatic perspective. Thus, different aspects of reality are revealed depending on the type of questions we ask. 20th century philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein said, "The limits of my language mean the limits of my world." Similarly, the limits of the questions we can ask become the limits of the world we can understand. Discovering and inventing new questions is like discovering and creating new worlds. Looking at the history of science, paradigm shifts often occurred with the emergence of new questions. The transition from Newtonian physics to Einstein's theory of relativity originated from the fundamental question, does absolute time and space exist? Modern quantum mechanics began with the question, is light a particle or a wave? Thus, questions are powerful tools that change our perception of reality. Hope is also an important dimension of reality interpretation. Hoping is not simply imagining a desirable future state, but seeing present possibilities differently. Ernst Bloch, a 20th century German philosopher, defined hope in his book, The Principle of Hope, as consciousness directed toward the not yet become. Such hope allows us to see the potential inherent in reality, possibilities not yet realized. From a somewhat cynical perspective, in modern society, our questions and hopes are often limited under the name of being realistic. The question, "Is this possible?" is immediately reduced to narrow interpretations like, "Is this economically feasible?" or "Can this work within the existing system?" Dominant paradigms like neoliberal capitalism, technological determinism, and bureaucracy limit the range of questions we can ask and hopes we can have. British cultural theorist Mark Fisher called this capitalist realism. This refers to the belief that There is no alternative to capitalism, the ideological condition that makes it difficult to imagine change beyond the existing economic and social order. Under these conditions, fundamental questions and alternative hopes are dismissed as unrealistic or utopian. Paradoxically, however, it is often these unrealistic questions and hopes that bring the most innovative and transformative changes. Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream of racial equality, Nelson Mandela's vision of ending apartheid, Malala Yousafzai's aspiration for education for all girls. All these were once considered unrealistic, but eventually changed reality. Questions and hope not only interpret reality, but become tools to change it. Brazilian educator Paulo Freire emphasized the importance of critical consciousness in his book, Pedagogy of the Oppressed. This means deep understanding that goes beyond simple recognition of reality to lead to action to change it. For Freire, the purpose of education was not simply transferring knowledge, but helping students critically question their reality and develop the hope and ability to change it. In modern society, we often limit the range of our questions and hopes in the name of being realistic. Limited questions like, is this economically feasible? Or, can this work within the existing system? Replace more fundamental and transformative questions. However, history shows that it is often these unrealistic questions and hopes that bring the most innovative changes. Reality change through questions, and hope occurs at both individual and collective levels. At the individual level, we change habits, attitudes, relationships, careers, etc., through new questions about our lives. At the collective level, communities change social institutions, policies, and cultural norms through questions they ask together and hopes they share. Technological development provides new tools and possibilities for interpreting and changing reality. The internet and social media allow more people to participate in public dialogue, share alternative narratives, and organize collective action. At the same time, this brings new challenges like information overload, echo chambers, and fake news. In the digital age, the ability to ask critical questions and share hopeful visions is more important than ever. In conclusion, questions and hope show the human ability to not passively accept reality, but actively interpret and change it. They are powerful tools that allow us not to simply adapt to the given world, but to understand and transform it. This is precisely the point where the two aspects of human who questions and human who does not lose hope connect inseparably. Chapter 9. Conclusion. Two axes of human existence. So far, we have examined how the two aspects of human who questions and human who does not lose hope are connected to each other and how they influence our lives in society. Now let's draw a conclusion by synthesizing all these discussions. Questions and hope are not simple thoughts and emotions. They are two axes of human existence, fundamental ways for us to understand the world and live meaningfully within it. Through questioning, we move toward truth, and through hope, we nurture inner strength to sustain that journey. Humans are beings who question. We continuously ask questions about ourselves, the world, and beyond. This ability to question allows us to recognize ignorance, pursue knowledge, discover ourselves, and find meaning even in failure. Questioning becomes the driving force not only for personal growth, but also for community change and development. At the same time, humans are beings who do not lose hope. We find light even in the darkest times, discover meaning and possibility even in the face of the greatest adversity. This hope is not simple optimism, but deep trust that finds meaning and possibility while facing the difficulties of reality. Hope sustains our souls like an anchor, becomes a bond of solidarity in community, and becomes the power to change reality. When these two abilities meet, we discover our most human aspects. Hope without questioning is blind and vain, and questioning without hope is cynical and despairing. But when questioning and hope are together, we critically understand reality while believing in the possibility of changing it. The Bible emphasizes the importance of such questioning and hope in many places. Jeremiah 29:11 says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope," emphasizing the importance of hope. Also, Matthew 7:7 teaches the importance of questioning and seeking attitude. Ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and it will be opened to you. Jesus himself often taught people with questions instead of direct answers. Questions like, "Who is your neighbor? What does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul? Who do you say that I am?" are not simple information transfers, but questions that lead to deep reflection and change. At the same time, the Bible is also a book of hope. Romans 5:3-5 says, "Not only that, but we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope, and hope does not put us to shame. Because God's love has been poured into our hearts through the Holy Spirit, who has been given to us." This shows that hope is not simple optimism, but deep trust formed through the process of suffering and endurance. Ultimately, the final answer to all questions lies in God. Psalm 42:1-2 sings, "As a deer pants for flowing streams, so pants my soul for you, O God. My soul thirsts for God, for the living God." All human questions and hopes are ultimately expressions of longing for God, and in Him they find complete response and fulfillment. Now, concluding the journey of human who questions, human who does not lose hope, the task left to us is clear. As beings who do not stop questioning, and as beings who do not lose hope, we must continue our journey toward light, even in failure and darkness. This is the essence of true humanity. Do not give up questioning because you haven't found the answer you want. Do not abandon hope because the darkness is deep. When the courage to question and the faith to hope are together, we can discover meaning and growth even in the most difficult situations. Human who questions, human who does not lose hope. This is the ideal we should pursue, and our true form. Through these two abilities, we can not only exist in the world, but understand and change it, and discover deep meaning and purpose within it. Thank you sincerely for accompanying me on this long journey. I hope this audiobook has been a small light in your life. If you want more stories and insights, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Your subscriptions, likes, and comments are a great strength to us. I pray that God's blessings be with you on your journey of questioning and hope. Thank you.